This man never imagined that after inserting his finger into his arm, his blood would transform into a chainsaw on one side and a saw blade on the other. This was a power that every ghost possessed, but the objects they created were different for each one. Shiki had loved firearms since he was a child, so his ghost blood could turn into various firearms, and the power of the shots he fired was just as strong as real bullets, even exceeding their power. This kind of ability had never appeared among their ghosts before. But not long ago, Shiki knew nothing about this. He had just entered the Ghost Academy and hadn't yet learned how to use his ghost blood. Shiki's teacher, Nato, played a game of ghost tag with them. If they were caught, they would be expelled on the spot. They had to reach the finish line within an hour, but there was one condition: they had to carry a designated ball. Since there were only 2 balls, the 7 of them were divided into 3 teams. Hamar, Shiki, and Jean were in the first group, meaning one of them would be eliminated. The other 4 were in pairs, competing for the 2 balls. Once the game began, Nato would wait 15 minutes before entering. At that moment, Hamar suddenly approached Shiki, wanting to cooperate with him. This was a good opportunity for Shiki, so he immediately agreed. Shiki had never had a girl willing to approach him, so he would never reject Hamar. He had also long disliked the aloof Jean. However, Jean didn't want to cooperate with them. He told Shiki not to be stubborn. He would be expelled sooner or later, so it was better to quit now. But just then, Nato grew impatient and immediately told the first group to start. Jean rushed out first, and Shiki followed behind, leaving Hamar alone at the starting point. Although Jean was the first to enter, his goal wasn't just to reach the finish line, he intended to kill Nato during the process. Nato had emphasized before the game that he wouldn't use ghost blood, and anyone who could kill him would graduate immediately and join the team they wanted. Jean was very tempted by this, as there was someone in the team he desperately wanted to meet. However, just then, Shiki attacked Jean. Shiki only wanted to challenge Jean one-on-one. Jean didn't want to say much. Since the number of balls was limited, he decided to eliminate Shiki first. Jean suddenly cut open his arm with his finger, and his blood gathered into saw blades on his arm. This was his ghost blood ability. Shiki was shocked when he saw this. He hadn't expected Nato to be able to freely control ghost blood, especially since they hadn't yet learned how to use it from their teacher. But Nato didn't feel like explaining. The battle began in the next second. One of them could use ghost blood, and the other couldn't, which put Shiki at a huge disadvantage. A single hit from Jean could kill him, while Jean would only feel pain if Shiki hit him. However, Shiki quickly realized he had overestimated things. Even without using ghost blood, Jean wasn't necessarily Nato's match. Shiki hadn't expected Jean to be so strong. Jean immediately launched an attack. At that moment, Hamar appeared. She walked toward Shiki. And in a crucial moment, Shiki saved her. Hamar was about to thank him, but Shiki's blood reminded her of bad memories. She realized that it was because of her that Shiki had been hurt. She panicked and began apologizing repeatedly. Shiki tried to tell her not to worry, but what he didn't know was that Hamar was starting to act strangely. Soon, a giant made of coagulated blood appeared in front of Hamar. It turned out this was the power of Homare's ghost blood, but unlike Jean, Hamar couldn't control it freely. She just urged Shiki to escape quickly, as otherwise, they would be killed by her sister. Meanwhile, Nato, calmly watching from nearby, had long been aware of everything. However, he didn't rush to take action because his goal wasn't to play ghost tag but to train his students in his own way. The threat of expulsion was just pressure for them. The ability to control ghost blood and change its shape was called blood erosion liberation. The principle behind it was to visualize an object in one's mind and then transfer it to the blood vessels. Some people manifested objects reflecting psychological trauma, some reflected hobbies, and